Hi, my name is Marie Hawkins. I'm the Veteran Chair for the NAACP branch in Mid-Manhattan. I'd like to welcome y'all to our Veteran Salute today. Our guest speaker is Mr. James Millard today. He's going to be talking about the Muffet Point Marines who just received a Congressional Medal this November. He'll speak more about it when he starts talking. The keynote speaker is Mr. Barry G. Campbell. He's the Chief Executive Officer and founder of VQLA, Veterans Quality Life Access Network Incorporated. He will be talking about veterans benefits and also his fight for the veterans system. Now, everybody please stand for the best Star Spangled Banner. This is Michelle Quintero, William Host. She's from William Hostess College. She's a graduate from William Hostess College.
Hello, good evening everyone. My name is Michelle Quintero Williams. I'm a Hostos Community College alumni, and I have the privilege of singing the Star Spangled Banner for you guys tonight. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, those bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
I have the POW MIA's table sitting right here for everybody can see. And now I will read the script. Those who have served and those currently serving this armed force are never mindful that the sweetness to enduring peace has always been tainted by the bitterness of personal sacrifice. We are compelled to never forget that while we enjoy our daily pleasure, there are others who have endured and may still be enduring the agony of pain, deprivation, and internment. Before we begin our activity this evening, we will pause to recognize our POW and MIAs. We call your attention to this small table which is occupied a place of dignity and honor near the head table. It is set for one, symbolizing the fact that members of our armed force are missing from our rank. They are referred to as POW and MIAs. When we call them comrades, they are unable to be with their loved one and family tonight, so we join together to pay our humble tribute to them and bear witness to their continued absence. This table is set for one, is small, symbolizes the frailty of one prisoner alone against his or her suppressor. The tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of the intention to respond to their country call to arms. The single red rose in the vase signifies the blood they may have shed and sacrificed to ensure the freedom of our beloved United States of America. This rose also reminds us of the family and friends of our missing comrade who keep the faith while waiting their return. The red ribbon on the vase represents the red ribbon worn on the lapels of the thousand who demand with unyielding determination a proper accounting of our comrades who are not among us tonight. A slice of lemon on the plate reminds us of their bitter fate. The salt sprinkle on the plate reminds us the countless falling tears of families as they wait. The glass is inverted. The glass is inverted, and they cannot toast with us this night. The chair is empty. They are not here. The candle is reminiscent of the light of hope which lives in our heart to illuminate their way home from the capture of the open arm of a grateful nation. Let us pray to the Supreme Commander that all of our comrades will soon be back within our rank. Let us remember and never forget their sacrifice. May God forever watch over them and protect them and their family. Guest speaker will be Mr. James Miller, President of Mufford Point Marine Association, New York Metropolitan Chapter.
Good evening. Good evening. I once stood before you, I believe it was at the last meeting? Yes, sir. And I discussed the Mufford Point Marine Association at that point in time. First of all, I'd like to thank those NAACP members from the Mid-Manhattan chapter who attended our annual dinner dance 2 weeks ago. We appreciated it, and there are a couple here I know that did not attend and that paid for the tickets, so I want to give you the souvenir journal and as well as the token of what we laid on the table for everyone. As I said, my name is James Maillard. I'm the president of the New York Metropolitan Chapter of the Mufford Point Marine Association. In 1942, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt established a presidential directive that allowed or enabled blacks to be recruited into the Marine Corps. A number of you may not know this, but during that time, even in 1942, blacks were not allowed in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps was actually the last service branch that actually opened up for to let blacks into the Marine Corps. But again, that only happened as a result of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Despite that, you had blacks that came from all over the country, from the East Coast to West Coast. But it didn't matter. All of those blacks, they had to train in North Carolina in a place called Camp Lejeune, but within the grounds there, it was called Moffett Point. Moffett Point was really an area that the CCC at that point in time, if you remember, Civilian Conservation Corps, they were working during that time in the 1940s. Well, they had those particular type barracks, and they had left them. And by the time that blacks were allowed into the Marine Corps, they were still segregated. They had them train at this particular spot called Moffett Point. The quarters in which they had were not good at all. You had snakes, you had the mosquitoes, you had everything. You had the malaria there. And also, too, you had white drill instructors. Black drill instructors were not allowed into the Marine Corps at that point in time. In fact, the blacks didn't even have any rank whatsoever. It took about almost the better part of a year before you even saw someone with a PFC stripe or a corporal stripe.
Wow.
But the reason why I want to bring that to your attention is that these blacks, they served honorably during that point in time. And they all came in during the period from 1942 to 1949. And they all trained at this particular place here that we call Moffett Point. Okay. Now what happened was a number of them went overseas. Also, over 20,000 blacks trained at Moffett Point during that point in time, which a number of people are not aware of. And a number of these blacks also went overseas to the Pacific. They served their country just like their white counterparts, and they also died over there as well. Even in my present chapter here, I'm proud to have about three of my chapter members who are in their late 80s, early 90s. They served on Iwo Jima. They were there. They did that invasion. So it wasn't just John Wayne that you tend to hear about sometimes that blacks weren't there. Blacks served all over in the Pacific, okay, and all of the islands that you can think of, Tinian, Tarawa, Okinawa, Iwo Jima, they were there, and they also shed their blood for us, for their country. But one of the things that I want to bring up now as to why the Moffett Point name is important is because throughout all these years here, a number of people are not aware. Their story has never been told. Like the Tuskegee Airmen, their story was told because everybody probably saw it on HBO specials, things like that, right? And as a result, they were able to earn the presidential medal. Sorry, I got a cold. I was not going to come tonight, but I knew that Marie would be on the phone. I didn't come, so. So what I want to say is that the Tuskegee Airmen and a host of others have already received this particular gold medal, presidential gold medal. And now, I'm proud to say that the organization that I'm a member of, the Moffett Point Marine Association, is now going to be receiving that same medal. And as a result, and as a result, a number of you will begin to hear a little bit more stories about the Moffett Point Marines. And who knows, you know, maybe they'll end up making short serial biographies or whatever, just like they did with the Tuskegee Airmen. And a number of our troops abroad now, they didn't even know anything about the black Moffett Pointers in the Marine Corps. So back in August of this year here, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, that is the top general in the Marine Corps, okay, he invited all of the original Moffett Pointers down to Marine Barracks, Washington, D.C. And they also did something that was unprecedented. The government paid to have a large number of blacks come to Washington, D.C. They paid their airfare or their train fare, and they also put them up in the hotel and bought food for them. What the Commandant wanted to do, he wanted to bring this presence out because it's been too long that the story has not been told. Even those blacks that were going through the Marine Corps in the past, say, 6 months, 7 months, when they're going through recruit training, they never heard of Moffett Point. As myself, I'm a vet from 1962 to 66. During that point in time, that was not a part of our recruit training. You knew nothing about Moffett Point. You didn't know that there was a history, that there's a legacy there. Okay. This Commandant has made it known throughout the Marine Corps that, number one, this is going to be a part of the history that all recruits will receive as I speak right now. Okay. He indicated this back on July 26th. It's already been implemented from what I found out. And going forward, everyone in the Marine Corps will know about the Moffett Point Marines, and not just those few of us, okay? Because I've met a number of Marines over the years who still never even heard of the Moffett Point Marines, and they're in the Marine Corps, and they were also stationed at Camp Lejeune as well. It was just one of those little stories that was just never told, but now that story is coming out. And I assume, or I'm thinking, that what's going to happen, that we will have some sort of special, sooner or later, that's going to depict the Moffett Point Marines. The last thing that I'd like to say is that at the time that they allowed the blacks into the Marine Corps actually thought that it would be like a trial basis and it would be just until the war was over with. And then they were thinking about disbanding them. But when they found out how well the blacks served alongside them in combat, you know, in combat, there is no color. You know, it's like you and me. Protect me, I'll protect you, okay? And that's exactly what happened. So at the end of the war, they realized that blacks had a part in this Marine Corps. And that's how they stayed in. Anyway, I will not belabor it anymore, but as I said, the biggest thing here that I want to say is that we could not have done it without Charlie Rango and a number of other congressmen. Congresswoman Corinne Brown, a Democrat from Florida, she was the one that initially introduced the bill for the Marine Corps, for the Montford Point Marines to get this Congressional Gold Medal. Okay, since that point in time, the House of Representatives have already passed it, and now the Senate has passed it. And according to my buddy over here, he tells me that as soon as the Senate passes that the President does sign it, but then you won't hear about it for a little while. They will, in turn, make a date when they want to make a ceremonial thing out of it, signing. So anyway, I'm looking forward to it, and a number of our guys are too. And at our annual affair, which was 2 weeks ago, I'm very glad to say and proud that we were able to name our annual dinner dance in the name of the Montford Point Marines, the original Montford Point Marines. Okay, and original Montford Point Marines, as I said before, are those Marines who served at this particular place in North Carolina in Camp Lejeune at a spot called Montford Point from 1942 to 1949. They are the original Montford Point Marines. By the time I went into the Marine Corps, I was serving alongside whites to begin with at that point in time. We were at Paris Island. Okay, so even then I knew nothing about it. But that's all changed. But again, as I want to reiterate again twice, I'm happy that this is going to happen, and that it will happen, and that all of you here will eventually hear the stories about the Montford Point Marines.
I'm going to ask Tom Capers to prepare the video. We have a special presentation. On October 25th, the House voted 422 to 0 unanimously to approve the gold medal, Congressional Gold Medal, be awarded to the Montford Point Marines. And on the eve of 11/11/11, the Senate approved the passage of that legislation. Just waiting for the President to sign it and have a ceremony and announcement to be here soon. That was an extraordinary day, extraordinary history. But also today, this year represents the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War conflict that began in 1961. And I thought it was important because as the forgotten war career, as the forgotten Marines at Montford, forgotten black Marines, the first black Marines that fought at Montford Point, they came out of Montford Point, that fought in Iwo Jima. Our Vietnam veterans still haven't gotten their proper recognition. Even though there's a wall and there's this remembrance, but there's really hasn't been any video or movie done by them either. And there's a movie that was put out that was produced by Lou Gossett and Frank Marin called For the Love of Liberty, that did a segment on Vietnam, but they traced the history of blacks in war, in military service, and heroes and in service from the Civil War to the present, to the war in the desert. And they did a little segment on Vietnam, and it's very good. I watched it several times. And at this point, we're going to honor those Vietnam veterans as we celebrate and remember the 50th anniversary by watching this segment. Tom, could you please?
In the 1980s, tensions in the Middle East began to dominate world events. Soldiers and civilians were dying in Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Israel, and Lebanon. In an effort to keep the peace, President Ronald Reagan ordered the United States Marines to Beirut.
You are about to embark on a mission of great importance to our nation and the free world. The conditions under which you carry out your vital assignment are demanding and dangerous. You are tasked to be once again what Marines have been for more than 200 years. Peacemakers. President Ronald Reagan.
In October of 1983, America took its first hit in a new and terrifyingly deadly form of warfare. when the Marine headquarters in Beirut was destroyed by terrorists driving a truck packed with explosives.
I heard a va-boom, va-boom, and all hell broke loose. The whole place lit up like the sun. It felt like something had hit me in the head. The place had started shaking, and I rolled into the fetal position. That's the way I ended up staying. Corporal Paul Rivers.
49 of the 241 Marines who died were black. General Paul Kelly, commander of the American troops, visited the wounded.
I spoke to a young Marine with more tubes going in and out of his body than I'd ever seen in one person. He couldn't see very well. He reached up and grabbed my 4 stars just to make sure I was who I said I was. He was making signals, and we realized he wanted to tell me something. We put a pad of paper in his hand, and he wrote, "Semper Fi, always faithful." General Paul X. Kelly.
General Colin Powell, now senior military assistant to the Secretary of Defense, would one day write,
"What I saw from my perch in the Pentagon was America sticking its hand into a 1,000-year-old hornet's nest with the expectation that our mere presence may pacify the hornets." General Colin Powell.
6 years later, in recognition of his leadership and military skills, Colin Powell became the highest-ranking black officer in the history of the United States when he was appointed chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Following the ceremony, he paid tribute to all of the African-American patriots who had come before him.
This wouldn't have been possible without the sacrifices of those black soldiers who served this great nation in war for over 200 years. General Colin Powell.
General Powell believed that military action must be overwhelming and decisive in order to be successful. It was a strategy that served the world well when Saddam Hussein attacked Kuwait. Within hours, the world's 4th largest army was just miles away from oil fields whose output was essential to the industrialized world. General Powell asked the question that was on everyone's mind.
Are we prepared to go forward and fight for Kuwait?
The answer was yes. Days later, U.S. fighter planes landed in Saudi Arabia, and Operation Desert Shield was underway. For the first time in its history, the United States military was fully integrated, co-ed, and following the orders of an African-American general. Vietnam-era veterans who liked to say, "The only color in the Army is green," led the all-volunteer force.
This Army of ours in the Gulf War was absolutely superb. Not perfect, but superb. It was the best Army that I ever saw. Deputy Commander Lieutenant General Calvin Waller.
In the early morning hours of January 17, 1991, the first shots were fired in what Saddam Hussein had called the mother of all battles. General Powell's plan for victory was clear.
Our strategy in going after this army is very simple. First, we're going to cut it off, and then we're going to kill it.
Iraq responded to the attacks by firing Scud missiles. 4 days into the battle, First Lieutenant Phoebe Jeter shot one down with a Patriot missile.
All around, I could hear the boom, boom, boom of other Patriot units beginning to fire. When we all started congratulating each other about the 4 Scuds the Patriots took down that night, I felt so proud. I thought to myself, I can do anything. Anything I put my mind to, I can do. First Lieutenant Phoebe Cheater.
The air war lasted 38 days. The ground war would be over in 4.
Iraq thought we were coming from the sea. They never expect us to come from where we did. We started moving at 0500. The resistance was nothing. We took a couple rounds and a few trucks were hit, but they had the casualties. Those who wanted to see Allah died. Then they started to give up. We just kept going and told them that someone in the back would pick them up. Marine Sergeant Darrington Battle.
Up to that point, only 4 Americans had died during the ground offensive. That all changed when an Iraqi missile landed on a U.S. Army barracks, killing 28 soldiers. Private Adrienne Mitchell, a black member of a non-combat Army supply unit, was one of them. Her father, a retired Air Force Chief Master Sergeant, was quoted in the media.
She was my pet, she was my baby. Her death, well, it was a fluke. God only knows why he took her. One day I'll find out. Frank Mitchell.
The next day, Arab troops liberated Kuwait City. When America's fighting men and women returned home, they were given a welcome the likes of which the nation had not seen since the end of World War II. Media coverage of their homecoming was tremendous. The March 11th issue of Life magazine declared, "Heroes all."
The celebrations were no doubt out of proportion to the achievement. Yet after the stalemate of Korea and the long agony in Southeast Asia, we had given America a clear win in a noble cause. The way I looked at it, if we got too much adulation for this one, it made up for the neglect the troops had experienced coming home from those other wars. General Colin Powell.
For the United States military, much of the 1990s was spent honoring its forgotten African-American heroes. In Concord, California, a memorial was dedicated to the 320 sailors that were killed in the Port Chicago naval disaster.
This memorial is invaluable to our community and to our country. It provides recognition to those who lost their lives in service to this country and helps our nation move beyond the racially tinged decisions that surround this tragic event in history. Congressman George Miller.
Despite countless acts of heroism during World War II, no black servicemen had yet received the Medal of Honor. That terrible injustice was finally rectified when 7 African Americans were recognized for their valor.
These heroes distinguished themselves in another almost unique way. In the tradition of African Americans who have fought for our nation as far back as Bunker Hill, they were prepared to sacrifice everything for freedom, even though freedom's fullness was denied to them. President Bill Clinton.
The honorees included Private George Watson, who gave his life rescuing soldiers aboard the Dutch steamer Jacob when it was attacked by Japanese bombers. First Lieutenant John Fox was killed the day after Christmas, stopping a Nazi advance in Italy. Staff Sergeant Reuben Rivers was recognized for leading the way in France. Major Charles Thomas stormed a village 5 miles from the German border. He later remarked, "I was sent to draw enemy fire, but I didn't mean to draw that much." Staff Sergeant Edward Carter, despite being shot 5 times, managed to kill 6 of his attackers and capture the other 2 before returning to his unit. Private First Class Willie James lost his life trying to save his wounded platoon leader. Second Lieutenant Vernon J. Baker destroyed multiple German positions, then covered the evacuation of his company's wounded by drawing the enemy's bullets. He was the only man who lived long enough to attend the ceremony.
As a black soldier, I fought a war on two sides. I was an angry young man, and all my soldiers were angry. But we had a job to do, and we did it. Medal of Honor recipient, Vernon Baker.
As the world rang in the 21st century, a global millennium celebration seemed to provide people of all races, faiths, and traditions with hope for the future. Yet, in remote Middle Eastern hideouts, terrorists were plotting America's destruction. Back in 1998, suicide bombers had blown up the American embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. Their next target was the USS Cole. Of the 17 sailors who lost their lives in the attack, 6 were African Americans, and 2 of those were women.
My heart ached as I thought of the families. Children who won't have a daddy home for Christmas. Mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, fiancés, and friends. All left behind as these 17 take their final tour of duty to a port we call heaven. Sailors, we salute you on your journey home. USS Cole Memorial website.
On the morning of September 11th, 2001, the terrorists came to America. 4 commercial airliners were hijacked and used to destroy the United States' international symbols of wealth and power. As a horrified nation watched on television, smoke poured from the Pentagon, and the twin towers of the World Trade Center collapsed in a smoldering pile of twisted steel.
We saw the second plane crash, and we got permission to take off, heading toward New York. I actually saw the towers fall. All you could see was smoke. It was a dust pile. That's all we could see. Major Anthony LaSure.
The world was stunned. Colin Powell, who was now the nation's first African-American Secretary of State, spoke for freedom-loving people everywhere when he said,
"They can destroy buildings, they can kill people, but they will never be allowed to kill the spirit of democracy." Secretary of State Colin Powell.
America war on the terrorists who had ruthlessly murdered 2,973 people.
To the men and women in our military, every sailor, every soldier, every airman, every Coast Guardsman, every Marine, I say this: your mission is defined. The objectives are clear. Your goal is just. We will not waver, we will not falter, and we will not fail. President George W. Bush.
Aboard the USS Enterprise, a sailor, whose name was never recorded, expressed the sentiments of all his shipmates when he said,
"Our role is to protect America. And that is what we're going to do."
In less than 2 months, American Marines had established a base in Afghanistan. They were kept resupplied and refueled by KC-130 transports. The men and women flying some of the planes made regular runs from bases in Pakistan. When one of the aircraft went down, 7 Marines lost their lives, including the war's first African-American casualties, Sergeant Jeanette Winters and Gunnery Sergeant Stephen Bryson. In a final Christmas card home, Stephen had written,
"Hi, Mom. I'm sure you know by now that I won't be home for Christmas. But I wanted to make sure you got this card from me. I miss you and hope everything is well. Have a wonderful holiday season and don't worry about me. I'm fine. Love, Stephen."
As the United States gained a foothold in Afghanistan, the war on terror spilled into Iraq. Despite protests at home and abroad, American servicemen and women were soon marching towards Baghdad. For the first time in history, the world was able to watch the conflict unfold in real time, courtesy of satellite video phones and journalists embedded in frontline units. One of the Marines that television viewers got to know was First Sergeant Edward Smith, a seemingly indestructible family man who was about to retire and to become a cop when he was needed in Iraq. As his unit headed to the front, he sent a short message to his buddies in the Anaheim Police Department.
"Things are going well here in Central Iraq. I'm doing fine. The Marines are staying the course. Tell everyone that I said hello. I'm taking a SWAT team ball cap all the way to Baghdad. If you can send me a small flag, I'll fly it in Iraq. Stay safe. Smitty."
Shortly before his men were due to enter Baghdad, First Sergeant Ed Smith was killed in action. The attack was captured on network television, and his death sparked a nationwide outpouring of sympathy.
First Sergeant Smith, you are a true American hero. One day we will meet, because I know that Marines stand guard at Heaven's Gate. Gary Decker, Petersburg, Virginia.
Baghdad fell to American forces in a matter of days, but the long and bloody battle for Iraq had just begun. As American troops settled in for the long haul, Lieutenant Colonel Reginald Allen assumed command of the 1st Squadron, 10th Cavalry, also known as the Buffalo Soldiers. He was the first black officer in the unit's 138-year history to ever lead the men into combat.
The incredible thing about the Buffalo Soldiers, especially those who served early on, is that they love this country enough that through the racism, through the bigotry, they still wanted to serve. They served with pride and honor and professionalism. That is absolutely no different than what the Buffalo Soldiers today are doing. We'll do it as best we can, as long as we can, until it is time for us to go home to our families. Lieutenant Colonel Reginald Allen.
God bless America.
American servicemen and women were fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan when back home, the American people elected their 44th president. On a cold winter morning, with 1.8 million people in attendance, Barack Obama placed his hand on Abraham Lincoln's Bible and repeated the oath of office.
So help me God.
With those words, the United States of America had its first black commander-in-chief.
The time has come to reaffirm our enduring spirit, to choose our better history, to carry forward that precious gift, that noble idea passed on from generation to generation, the God-given promise that all are equal, all are free, and all deserve a chance to pursue their full measure of happiness. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
The story of America's black patriots is a paradox. Since 1641, there has never been a time in our history when African Americans were unwilling to serve and bravely sacrifice for their country. Yet, despite this valiant heritage, until recently, no matter the conflict, whenever America was engaged in war, the question, would the Negro fight, was raised in numerous ways, and always with the same racist assumptions. African Americans were inferior. They couldn't be trusted with a gun. They didn't have the intelligence or the courage to fight. They wouldn't follow orders, let alone ever be capable of giving them.
As history has vividly demonstrated, what ultimately needed to be asked wasn't would the Negro fight, but rather why. As African American servicemen and women continue to shed their blood in the defense of the United States, the answer to that question is abundantly clear. Like all Americans in all wars, African Americans fought for love of liberty.
Give him a round of applause first. That moment of silence before we hear from our keynote speaker. Thank you. Madam Chair.
I'd like to make a correction on the program. It says the Muffet Point Marine is the first Marine unit that served in the Pacific in the World War II. It's supposed to say the Muffet Point Marine is the first black Marine unit that served in the Pacific in the World War II. Also, I'd like to present the keynote speaker. Mr. Barry Campbell is a great advocate for veterans and the CEO of Veteran Quality of Life Access Network Incorporation, VQLAN, which he founded on February 2nd, 1999. VQLAN provides access to a range of information about other organizations that help veterans enjoy a better quality way of life. He also has the form for the veterans to apply for the benefit being offered, making it easy for the veterans. Mr. Campbell is a veteran who served 3 years in the United States Army as a cook. His compassion to help veterans was motivated in the 1970s after he came out of the service and observed mistreatment of veterans. Since then, Campbell has made its mission to help veterans find their way after serving in the armed forces by creating a morally strong, rooted organization that is dedicated to positive outcome. All veterans that are willing to get help will receive positive results on information on basic needs such as help with receiving positive, such as help at Social Security, housing, job, assistance, pension, welfare, and different VA issues such as claim, education, rehab, and lots more. He worked for the New York Veteran Administration VA for 30 years and retired in July 2011. He has helped thousands of veterans file successfully for disability benefit ranging from 10% to 100% during his time as a compensation and pension coordinator at the Manhattan VA Hospital. Mr. Campbell has received 3 certificates of commendation from the New York City chapter of the Military Order of Purple Heart, a State of New York proclamation from Senator Andrew J. Lanza for being a true champion of veterans' rights, and numerous awards. And he also had received numerous awards, accolades, and testimony from all across the world. He is a member of the Mid-Manhattan. Now I present you Barry G. Campbell. All right.
First thing I want to say is thank God, because that's who helps me help them, okay? Because if I waited for anybody, they wouldn't have been helped. But it's okay. Second thing I want to thank is Marie and the President. And I want you to know I've learned so much by sitting here. I've been in the veteran world for a long time, and there's still things that we don't know about. I also want you to know that those same prejudices that they talk about are still here. Yes, sir. And I fight them daily with my head up high, okay? I'm going to make this quick because I made up an agenda, because I'm not only here to talk about, see, this thing is not about talk no more. We done heard enough talk. This thing is about action. We need help. We already know what the problem is, and I found a solution to the problem. But naturally, people don't want to listen because maybe I'm not the right color. But it's okay, because I have God on my side, and I will prevail. Okay? So, here's the agenda, Mr. J. And my brother Jay had to leave the room because what y'all was talking about was so close to our hearts. You have no idea what we was looking at.
I was there.
Okay? He's a Vietnam veteran. But I helped so many Vietnam veterans that it's ridiculous, because when I started helping veterans, the veterans was walking around the VA, they were all drugged up. I asked them, what is wrong with you? They tell me this Thorazine and Prozac. They feeding them like pigs. And I also asked them, did you put in for your benefits? And nobody helped them put in for their benefits. Okay? So God dropped me in compensation and pension about 20 years ago. And I didn't even know why I was there. But as I sat and I listened, and I'm a Vietnam-era veteran myself, and I seen how much they was mistreated, I decided to stand up and try to do something about it. Because there are plenty of talkers, but our problem is there ain't too many doers that will make the difference. Everybody know what to say, and nobody know how to help us. I wanted to congratulate the Moffat Marines, because you know, there's things that I know, and I hope you know too, like the poisoning of the Marines on Camp Lejeune. That's what I fight. I fight things that are here now This is not an old thing, it's a now thing. I am a now person. I run an organization, a new millennium organization. The reason why I created this organization, because they failed us. Somebody forgot how to tell us how to get our benefits. What I did was I created a new system for us, and it works like gold. I have proven that not one vet in America was informed properly, and that's why they are suffering. I am here to stop the suffering. Somebody needed to stand up, and God gave me the power too. And I hope them guys that y'all looking at on TV. First thing we're going to just agenda, because I am tired of talking about who I am. So what I did was I brought you my latest paper that you need to go home and read, because what I have done, you're not going to believe it anyway. So that's why I let you read, because I've been out here 30 years fighting a battle with no backup. Okay? And I did have backup, because remind yourself, when God is on your side, who could be against you? Okay? So Jay, give everybody a magazine. And what we're going to do, see, I'm an advocate. I'm many, many things. I'm a teacher. I teach this stuff because I will prove that knowledge is power. And they held the knowledge from us, and most of us died from not knowing. I want you to understand, they had the right stuff, and nobody helped them. That's the bottom line. And now I know why, because I also ran into the prejudices of America. America's disgrace that we serve our country, and when we get back here, we are not informed properly, and most of us are already dead. I'm only helping the ones that are left. There's millions and millions of people, veterans, that come out right now, and they are not screening them properly. My thing is, most people talk about the problem. I am the solution to the problem. I already know what the problem is. I've talked to millions of veterans, and we all got the same problem. Nobody gave us no love.
Veterans coming home that had jobs and they left. But those jobs are gone. And coming back in an economy that has not shown itself to anybody. We're all hurt by this. Now you imagine when they come home, how that's going to impact the economy and your neighborhood. So when you see these vets coming back home and they are homeless, don't shy away from them. Try to take a hand. Like we got to take one of our youth by the hand and try to help somebody, because half the people doing stuff on the street, they do it because they don't have a choice. And they're at their wits' end. There's a lot of stories out there, and then and there's a lot of reason behind the stories. So when you hear these provocative speeches, when you hear this presentation, that's the real. That's the real what's going on in these streets right now, in your neighborhood, right outside your door. And that only is going to increase as these vets come back home. Some are coming home limbless. Some are coming home without homes, without family, without support. And education. They went in without education, they're coming back without it. That's right. Because they reduced a lot of the programs that the GI Bill is out there for. And so, this is very important stuff. Veterans Day is a very important month, Veterans Month. But that's every day, and that's something that's the reality, and I think Mr. Campbell was really trying to express that to you. That's the reality out here. I mean, you've been out there in Afghanistan worried about getting blown up every day, or you heard bombs blowing up around you, and you come back into an environment with no support. You're gonna reject your family. You're gonna have problems at home. We're going to turn our way and say, that guy's crazy. We're going to talk about you. We're not going to help you. And the point that Ms. Campbell's making is that be prepared for that. And we have to look at the other side. There's always two sides of the story. You may not have heard about the sexy benefits that the Veteran Affairs Committee is doing, and we can get someone from the Department of Veteran Affairs to come here and tell us all about the benefits. But you're hearing somebody who's talking to people who don't know where the benefits are. And it's the language that he has to speak to them, because that's the language they understand on the street. So I'm going to close by asking my chairs if they come up. If they got to come on up and take